First thing, everybody mark this down. Thursday, December 10th. Thursday, December 10th, the final will open at 9:30. Thursday, December 10th, the final opens at 9:30. It will close at 11:30. At 11:30, if you have started it late, as I said before, at 11:30 it still closes. And so if you start at 11:20 and you're halfway through, at 11:30 it closes down. So Thursday, December 10th, 9:30 to 11:30. Mark it down. I didn't give you any quizzes for this week. I will also give you Thanksgiving off. But the week that we have before finals, you will have a quiz on Monday and Wednesday, and also some handouts will go out on those days. So put a reminder, there will be quizzes the week before. There will be quizzes the week before. I will, of course, put all this information up in an announcement. However, you might as well get it now and start prepping. There won't be any lockdown browser or anything else. There won't be any, ProctorU. It's just you've got a 2-hour window to get it done. That's the only thing you've got to look at. Today is just a review. Ideally, we just go as long as it takes to cover the information I've got. And so, like many rides at Disneyland, it takes a lot longer if it breaks down. So let's see if we actually have more than 1 or 2 people shouting answers. What was the first openly homosexual show to open in New York? Boys in the Band. Thank you. Who wrote that? Mort Crowley. It did open off-Broadway. It finally got its Broadway premiere just in the last 5 years on its 50th anniversary. But it was a very big deal for it to get an opening back in 1968. 1968, it was groundbreaking. El Teatro Campensio. The Working Theater is associated with who? Luis Valdez. Luis Valdez, El Teatro Campensio. He got his start working with what group? San Francisco Mime Troupe. He was an actor, an aspiring playwright. El Teatro Campensio. He becomes that full playwright. And today he is known as Luis Valdez is the He is the father of Chicano drama. He is the father of Chicano drama. Chicano being Chicano. Mexican descent, born in the United States. And so, as he said in his famous quote, they were here before America was America. And so they've been in California long before it became a state. They've been in Arizona, New Mexico long before it became a state. He is mostly noted for his work in 1979, which was, and Zoot Suit's important because, yeah, but what made this a landmark? It was. But there's another thing that makes this a significant show. It was about the Zoot Suit riots, about the migration of GIs to the West Coast, where the Chicanos found themselves minorities in their own communities. It adapted elements of the living newspaper, which had been developed by the Federal Theater Project. But why is this such an important show? It was the first Latino or Hispanic show to open on Broadway. It's the first show written by a person of Latino or Hispanic descent to open on Broadway, 1979. So 1968, we had Boys in the Band. 1979, we had, and 1959, we had A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun, which is important in 1959 because it made it what? It was the first play to appear on Broadway written by an African American. Those are your three dates that you should know: 59, 68, 79. 59, 68, 79. Raisin in the Sun, The Boys in the Band, and then we finish off with Zoot Suit. All of them crashed down ceilings. They were big-time breakers. It's after them, floodgates open, a lot of other things start occurring. Whom is the only African to win a Nobel Prize in literature? No. It is not Amiri Baraka. This is an African, a person from the continent of Africa. Say it. Soyinka. Wole Soyinka. What position in the theater is the most removed from the production process? The playwright. In the 20th century and in the 19th century, it really got underway. The playwright is now the most removed individual from the production process. Who was the first dramaturge? Ephraim Lessing. Lessing. Remember, they wanted him to be a resident playwright in Hamburg. He came back and said, I want to be your in-house critic, and thus the dramaturge was born. Dramaturges we can break into two categories. One is production dramaturgy, the other one is literary management. Which one is only concerned with an individual play? Production. The title itself should give it, production dramaturgy. Production dramaturgy is generally a contractor who's been hired to work on one play. And so they are the production dramaturgs. For that production, they are in charge of all that information. The literary manager is generally an employee of a theater. And so that's the one that's working with playwrights, trying to help them develop plays, working with the directors and selecting a season. You know, and like I said, there are not many full-time literary management dramaturges. In fact, the state of Alabama, to my knowledge, has only one, and that's at the Alabama Shakespeare. You know, you're lucky if you find a state where there's like 5, and that would be up in New York. And so it's not exactly a position with a lot of job openings, but production dramaturgy is the dominant of the two. And also remember, it is a luxury for a theater to have one. You do not have theaters, jumping around with dramaturges that they can just call upon when necessary. Most important African American actor of the 19th century. That's first half of the 20th century. But you're ready for that one. This individual had to leave the United States. Ira Aldridge. Ira Aldridge is the most important African American actor of the 19th century. However, his fame does not come from the United States. It's for his work overseas, where he is still considered one of the finest Shakespeare actors in history. What is the number one job of a producer? First thing on the list if you're going to be a producer. Funding. The correct term would be capital. A producer provides capital. That is their number one job when they take on a project. They are the capital. They're the bank. Workshopping for playwrights is otherwise known as what? New play development. You can put new play development and equal sign workshopping. They both mean the same thing. Workshopping, new play development, basically it's before a play has ever seen a stage or anything. It's being worked on with a lot of other hands giving you advice on it. This female playwright has often been cited as writing feminist works, and in 1995 she won the Pulitzer. Paula Vogel. What was the play that won? How I Learned to Drive. How I Learned to Drive. Who is the most successful producer in Broadway history? Who? Nope. The most successful producer in Broadway history. Cameron Mackintosh. His most successful show? Phantom of the Opera. Because when we talk about producers, we're talking about bottom line, money. And that is his most profitable. It's been running since 1988, making it longest running show in Broadway history. If it wasn't for a pandemic, you could still get a ticket at the Majestic to see it. It has just lived there since 1988. Of course, he's also responsible for Les Mis. He's responsible for Cats. He's responsible for Miss Saigon. He's responsible for Mary Poppins. And he's also the producer behind Hamilton. And so when you start taking a look at the honor roll of this guy, it's very impressive, considering that the number 1, 2, and 3 longest running shows in Broadway history are all his productions. Who's the most successful producer in West End history? West End, the British Broadway. Nope. I'll give you that, though. It was a reach. Here's a hint that should give it away. They're also the most successful producer in Broadway history. I can't give a better hint than that, folks. It's Mackintosh. He's the most successful producer in both Broadway and West End history. His shows were selling out in Britain before they moved to America. In fact, Phantom of the Opera, Cats, Miss Saigon, Les Mis, all originally opened in Britain, and then he moved them over to the States. And so they've been running over there just as long. In fact, Phantom's been running there since '86. Unfortunately, they have decided they will not reopen it after the pandemic. You know, it's one of those shows that will be a casualty of what is going on in the world today. This playwright wrote what he called a master college. August Wilson. The master college is also called what? Pittsburgh Cycle or Century Series. Century Series, Master College, Pittsburgh Cycle. Now, Wilson himself called it the Master College, but it has gotten a lot of nicknames over the years. How many plays make up the Master College? 10. 10 plays, one for each decade of the 20th century. How many of those plays won Pulitzers? 2. 2 out of the 10 have won Pulitzers, and the 2 winners were Fences and The Piano Lesson. Fences and The Piano Lesson were the 2 plays he wrote that did win the Pulitzer. Why is it often called the Pittsburgh Cycle? They all tie into Pittsburgh. Characters either came from Pittsburgh, they're going to Pittsburgh, the play's occurring in Pittsburgh, but somehow, in some way, Pittsburgh plays into the plot of what's going to happen in that show. Theater of the Oppressed. Theater of the Oppressed, who's it associated with? This individual was arrested, tortured, exiled. And that was like before a Monday. It's a pretty bad week. Who? Boal. Augusto Boal. What country is he from? Brazil. Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed was the idea of using theater to inform people of political situations and strife. The government did not smile upon this idea at all, and that is why Boal is one of those individuals who went away for a while. And then exiled to Argentina, he lived in France, then to the United States, and when the Brazilian government finally fell apart, he moved back to Brazil and continued practicing his Theater of the Oppressed, using theater to inform those who were at the bottom of the ladder of what they can do to try and move up. What position is traditionally the first hire of a producer? Producer's got his project, he knows what he wants to do with it. Who does he go out and get, the first job to? The director. Director is the first hire traditionally of a producer because that's the person who has to make it all happen. Somebody has to be in charge to the end. This actor's passport was confiscated by the U.S. government, denying him foreign travel because the U.S. objected to his protesting on civil rights. Paul Robeson, who is the most important actor of the first half of the 20th century. What iconic musical is he associated with? Showboat. Old Man River. That song will always be associated with Paul Robeson. In ancient Greece, what position traditionally directed the play? Nope. But don't worry, we'll get to that part. Just be ready for the next part. Nope. Who directed shows in ancient Greece? This position has become less and less important to the production process. The playwright. So you got Aeschylus directing them. Now, when we get to the Renaissance, who directed the shows? The main actor. The lead actor directed them. By the time we get to the Renaissance, it's not until we make it to the 19th century that we start to have the director, a person whose sole job is to structure the show. Up until then, it was a person who had heavy involvement with all the other aspects of the show. But it's not until we make it to the 19th century we have the director. Who is regarded as the first modern director? George II, Sachsen-Meiningen. The German guy, he had some money, he really liked theater, and he decided, I'm not really an actor, I'm not a playwright, what can I do? And so he developed himself into the first modern director. His whole job was to make the show work. He started planning out long rehearsal processes, he started using his money to buy more accurate props and settings, and it really took off. And so he is regarded as the first modern director. Now, there's always been a person in charge of putting a show together, whether it was the lead actor, whether it was the playwright. One of the first hints we have, though, of a director is in the Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, the church employed a position called this is that person who had to put together all those church plays, all those liturgical dramas. Many people would argue that this is actually the first director, not the modern director, but the first director, because this person didn't act in the show. Nope. It's a position, not a person. Nope. But my God, we couldn't live without them today. Nope. Put it down, everybody, because I know I did point at it. Pageant master. It was the pageant master. That was the position in the Middle Ages that put together those liturgical dramas. All we know about them is they carried a stick and they pointed a lot. Why? They were dealing with amateur actors. They weren't there trying to interpret the play, which is what George II and modern directors would do. They were simply just trying to corral people. More than anything else, they were herding people on and off stage. But it is one of the earliest examples we have of a director, is the pageant master. Top Girls is a British play by Caryl Churchill. Churchill is associated with what political theater? In-your-face theater, agitprop. It is the sort of theater that antagonizes. This is one that comes directly from Crash Course. The Polish Laboratory Theater. This comes directly from Crash Course, folks. So if you have notes from your Crash Course, you have a chance at it. The Polish Laboratory Theater. Correct. Jerzy Grotowski was the director of the Polish Laboratory Theater. He is a significant director. He was attempting to do the same things that Peter Brook was trying to do in Britain at the same time, but they were doing it independent of each other, and that was reducing theater to its most essential. an actor, and an audience. But the Polish Laboratory Theater was under the direction of Jerzy Grotowski. The Ridiculous Theater Company. Charles Ludlam founded the Ridiculous Theater Company, and its purpose was what were they doing? That's right, they were making fists and waving. With words. I find they give us advantages over others. He was attempting to put theater on that catered to and appealed to the gay and lesbian communities. If you went to popular entertainment at that time, movies, theater, anything, television, gay and lesbian characters were to be pitied or they were villains. And Charles Ludlam was attempting to create a theater which put on shows that were not showing people as weak or depraved, but people as they actually were. Now, there is a member of the African American theater community who had a similar goal. This individual was attempting to, yes, Amiri Baraka. Amiri Baraka. In fact, Baraka adapted a motto from W.E.B. Du Bois, which was, by us, about us, and for us. And Du Bois added near us, but I'm not too worried about that part. But the idea was, you can go see a Broadway show anytime. They play all the time. But they're not about us. We should be creating shows that are for us, plays about us. And so that was his big role in there. What is considered Baraka's master work? The Dutchman. It is such a piece of 60s theater, just like the in-your-face theater that Churchill was collaborating with. The Dutchman is one of those works that just reaches out and attacks. Who directed A Raisin in the Sun on Broadway? Yes, Lloyd Richards. Lloyd Richards was the director of A Raisin in the Sun on Broadway, but perhaps he is even more well known as an educator, and his prized pupil would be August Wilson. Where was he teaching? Yale. Yale School of Drama. With a producer providing capital, one of the first things he has to negotiate with are organizations that represent the actors, that represent the technicians, that represent the writers, that represent the the directors. What are those organizations called that he has to work out contracts with? What? Unions. One of the first headaches a producer has to deal with is he has to negotiate with all the unions, because there's a union for everything when you deal with professional theater. That said, the largest of those unions he has to deal with is the union for actors. What is this union for actors? And I ask because the documentary actually dwells on this. Actors Equity Association, otherwise just known as Equity. But that is the organization that represents all stage actors, If you have seen a show on tour, then you have seen equity actors. If you go down to the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, you have seen equity actors. Every Broadway show is nothing but equity actors. Why? Because there's a simple rule. If one actor gets on stage that's not a member of equity, all the equity actors walk off stage. That way they ensure membership. And so, equity is the big union that the producer has to deal with. This show opened on May 8th, 2000 and closed on May 8th, 2000. Big loss. Glory Days. Glory Days is an example of those shows that people thought were a great idea, and then before you knew it, they had millions of dollars stuffed into it, and then it was gone. It's just one of those sad results that happens all too often. A Raisin in the Sun takes its title from what? A poem. Who wrote the poem? Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes' poem, A Dream Deferred. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? This one we didn't cover, but it was in the documentary. Nicholas Hytner often had to deal with this person who is his right hand. This was the person who stepped in for Hytner to get a lot of things done. Hytner would give orders. This is the person who carried them out. What position was that? Of course, you have to remember who Nicholas Hytner was to have a chance at that. Who was Nicholas Hytner? Nicholas Hytner was the director of Miss Saigon. Who is the right hand of the director? The stage manager. Please put that down. The right hand of the director is the stage manager. That's the person that's constantly being sent out. The only non-performers who are allowed to join equity are stage managers. Stage managers are also covered under the union for equity. Other than that, you better be an actor, otherwise no one's answering the door. What is the oldest form of drama in Japan? No drama. No drama, like Greek theater, all the actors had what? Mask. What's the most popular form of theater in Japan? Kabuki. And large puppets can be found with bunraku. Kabuki does not wear masks. Instead, elaborate makeup. Makeup covering the entire face. Big deal for them. I only covered one style of theater dealing with China, and that was Beijing opera or Peking opera. Both are acceptable. One playwright I covered was an Afrikaner. What is an Afrikaner? They are a South African, but particularly they are a white South African. From Dutch descent, you are correct. A white South African playwright. Who is this playwright? Othel Fugard. Othel Fugard. whose work was never performed in his home country while it was under what form of government? And yes, it was segregated. Apartheid. Thank you. The apartheid government of South Africa, had one of his plays been performed in South Africa, he would have been arrested. He became famous because of his plays being performed outside of the country. And so, Fugard's masterwork is considered Master Harold and the Boys. This Schubert violin piece gives title to this Chilean work. Death and the Maiden. Death and the Maiden by Ariel Dorfman. Now teaches at Duke University and is still alive and with us. But Death and the Maiden by Ariel Dorfman. Wole Soyinka, who we've already stated is the only African to win a Nobel Prize in Literature, is mostly associated with this, considered his masterwork, Death and the King's Horseman, whose story you can find on Crash Course and is actually stunning because it deals with traditional African theater and how it meets up against colonial theater. In traditional African theater, what is the least important aspect? Dialogue. Too many languages, too many dialects. As a result, there's that whole argument in Africa, should we be performing in colonial languages or tribal languages? In traditional African theater, dialogue is not important because what is important? Traditional African theater is built on music and dance. And the music that drives it? Drums. African drumming is the heart of traditional African theater. Why? Because you can hit a drum in North Africa, you can hit a drum all the way in South Africa. It's a drum that's recognized throughout the continent. It's a universal instrument. And so, folks, we have covered global, we have covered theater in diversity, and we have covered 4 of the main positions, and I added on stage manager because I was hoping you guys would pick it up from there. And so all these things have been covered. And so, what is the date of the final? December 10th. It will open at 9:30. It will close at 11:30. Opens at 9:30, closes at 11:30. So there's a 2-hour window to get it done. Why a 2-hour window? Because I've got to get everything graded from other classes also. And so, unfortunately, you're not the only worry I have in this world. And so please, please start looking for that right now. Remember, you're not returning after the break. And so wherever you're taking this, make sure your internet connection is up for it and you're ready to go. I should have your final grades issued by the end of that day. It shouldn't be rocket science putting it together. But that said, if you want to know how you stand, you can go on Canvas and take a look. This final is worth 10% of the grade. And so if you've been bordering somewhere, it's a letter. If you're close enough to the next letter, it can raise you up. At the same time, if you fumble it, it can pull you down. So there's 10% riding on this one. There will be 2 more quizzes online through Crash Course before the end of this because after Thanksgiving, we have a week before the finals begin. So be aware of that. Are there any questions before we break? The silence is stunning. All right, folks, good luck with everything and good luck on the other finals and stay safe over the break. Only good advice I can give you is don't drink and drive.